Welcome back to the show. I'm Ken Wells, your host, and today we're going to talk about family law, and more specifically about the nuts and bolts of custody. So with me today is John Schuman, who's a family lawyer with Devry Smith Frank LLP. John is also head of the family practice at Devry Smith Frank. So John, welcome to the show.
I'm glad to be here.
So when we talk about custody, it can be very stressful for both parents and children. So why don't we start off, what does the term custody actually mean?
Yeah, the legal meaning of custody is something that people often misunderstand because it's not what a lot of people think. Custody is not about where the children actually live. Instead, it's about who makes the big decisions. And when I'm saying big decisions, I'm talking about things like where the child goes to school and whether the child gets major medical treatment or not. It's not about the child living here on Monday and there on Tuesday. It's about the decision making. And so that's what custody means. This residential schedule for the child is something completely different.
Okay, so what's the difference between sole custody and joint custody?
So sole custody, which is the easy one, is when one parent is the one who has the final say over the decision. So there's one parent who makes all the big decisions, like whether the child goes to school and whether the child gets major medical treatment and what religion the child has. And that parent has the final say. In joint custody, the decision making is shared. And the usual way that joint custody works, or the most common, is that the parents have to work together to come to decisions. So they have to agree on what school the child goes to, for example. They have to agree on whether the child participates in certain activities. And if they can't agree, then it just doesn't happen. The other sort of variant of joint custody is this thing called parallel parenting. And parallel parenting is where you divide up the big decisions between the parents. So like the mother makes decisions about one thing and the father makes decisions about the other things. So for example, the mother can make decisions about what school the child goes to, and the father could make decisions about whether the child gets surgery or not. And they don't have to talk with each other about their decision, although it's almost always better for the child if they do talk and they do communicate. But in the end, they get to have their separate decision making, and that can avoid having fights between the two of them. And so that's what parallel parenting is about.
Okay, so what are the different types of parenting arrangements that they can have?
So in terms of the schedule for where the children live, there's the traditional type of parenting arrangement is called sort of the primary parent and the secondary parent, or the primary home and the secondary home. And that's where you have a child who lives primarily with one parent and sees the other parent on weekends and maybe once or twice during the week. And that is sort of what's happened in the past. A lot that was considered what was the usual, not quite so much the usual anymore, but that's a primary parenting, secondary parenting thing. Another way that a type of parenting is called split parenting. And split parenting, to have split parenting, you have to have more than one child, because the idea is that one child lives primarily with one parent, the other child lives primarily with the other parent, and then they have the same sort of schedule where the child spends weekends or whatever with the other parent, but both children do that with the opposite parent. But it's still the idea of that one child is primarily with one parent, one child is primarily with the other parent, and that's split parenting. The third type is called shared parenting, and shared parenting is what it sounds like. It's where parents share the parenting, and so the children live sort of half and half with each parent. So that can be the week about, where they live 1 week with one parent, 1 week with the other parent, or some people do it for shorter periods of time. So it's like 2 day, 2 day, 2 day, 2 day, which results in the children being with different parents during the days of the week as you rotate, because there's 7 days a week, and so you're going by 2 days at a time. Another option is that sometimes parents do like Monday, Tuesday with one parent, Wednesday, Thursday with the other parent, and they rotate back and forth Friday, Saturday, Sunday. But the idea is to have about the equal amount of time with each parent, and that's what shared parenting is about.
Well, it sounds like there's a lot of different complications in there. Is there a preferred situation now?
There isn't really a preferred situation now. I mean, what judges want and what therapists or whoever is helping the family wants is what's best for the children, because the ultimate test is what's in the best interest of the children. And often that involves the children having a meaningful relationship with both parents, because it's almost always better if the children have a meaningful relationship with both parents. But what it comes down to is, what is the schedule, what is the parenting arrangement, what is the decision-making arrangement that works best for the child? And that's the primary consideration now.
Okay, so when we talk about court orders, is there a like any general guidelines for people as to what a court might order?
Yeah. So if you go to court or you go to an arbitrator and have them decide, then they have to apply the law about what the schedule should be for the children and what the decision making should be for the children. So when the judge does that, they have to apply a test that's in the Children's Law Reform Act, and that says what's in the best interest of the child, and there's specific factors there. If you have a mediator or someone help you instead, they're also going to want to do what's in the best of the child, but it's not quite as structured because the statute actually sets out specific things the court has to consider. It has to consider the ability of both parents to parent, which means if you have a parent who's an incompetent parent, that is obviously a big factor in where the children live. Also, the plans that each parent has for how they're going to look after the children, who has a good plan, which was best for the child, and who's maybe one parent has a plan that doesn't work so well for the children. Another consideration is often the ability of each child to meet the child's specific needs. So if there's a child who has special education needs and one parent has better with special education needs, that can be a big factor. Another factor is that the child's wishes, where they can be reasonably ascertained, but obviously children have to have their own wishes. They can't be those of parents. They're just parenting, and they have to be able to express them coherently, and that usually means that as a child gets older, their views and preferences become more important, but they're never determinative of the fact. The judge, if you're before a judge, always has the final say, and the child just has some input, no better than either one of the parents, into what the final decision should be.
Are there other factors that come into play in regards to a judge deciding what type of custody order or parenting order that they're going to make?
Yeah, so there are some very specific considerations. Well, the judges have dealt with this a lot, and so they come up with some general sort of ideas of what's good for children, what's not good for children. And one thing that judges always see as bad for children is conflict, and children being exposed to conflict. And in fact, if you look at the social science research, or you look at the case law and what happens to kids in the long term, you'll find that what hurts kids is not the divorce. What hurts kids is the conflict between their parents and being exposed to that conflict, and that can cause long-term emotional damage. So one of the big considerations, other than whether a parent is competent or not to even just parent, is how the parents deal with conflict. And in fact, if your parents don't deal well with conflict, judges can view that parent as being an incompetent parent. But that's a consideration in that if there's domestic violence in the relationship and one parent is being threatening or domineering or violent, then judges tend to think that parent is probably not a good person to award custody to. And it's probably not a good situation to have joint custody, because that's basically going to have that parent dominating the decision making anyways. Another consideration is whether or not the parents work well together, because if they work well together, then joint custody is a good idea, because it gives both parents the opportunity to think things over and have two minds work on it rather than one. But where they don't work well together, the judges have a more complicated decision to make. And if they don't work well because one parent is causing a lot of fights, then judges think that, well, the parent who's causing a lot of fights, as I said, is probably not the best parent, so the other parent should probably have more input into the decisions making with regard to the children, maybe should be parenting the children more. If it's both parents fighting and they're both responsible for it, then the judges, they don't like that at all, because that's a bad situation for the kids. Then they have to look at whether or not, is joint custody going to work in that situation? And often it's not going to work, because, they have to share the decision making. But if it's a situation where both parents are, trying to undermine the other parent, then the judges don't really want to give one parent the reward of joint custody, and they don't want to give one parent the ability to undermine the other parent with a sole custody order. So that's when the parallel parenting type situation comes up, and they try to hive off the parenting so that each parent gets to make their own decisions, but they don't influence the other parent's decisions. Another big consideration is the undermining of the other parent. And if you're going to undermine the other parent's parenting, that means you're going to make those digs to the kids about the other parent and try to make the parents think the other parent is a less worthy person. That's really bad in terms of what judges think, and they will really frown upon that, and that can get you into big problems, even lose your custody if you do it. So undermining another parent is a big consideration. Another thing that is important, if you want to have, and this should be obvious, but if you want to have shared parenting where the kids are moving back and forth a lot, you actually have to live close to each other. because just because you want to have the kids 50% of the time doesn't mean that their kids' friends want to see their friends 50% of the time. It doesn't mean they have to get to go to school 50% of the time. So you have to live close to the school, close to the friends, close to the activities. So geographic proximity is a big factor in deciding whether a shared custody situation will work. And finally, I said before the considerations about what the children want. That's a bit of an influence, but you shouldn't be driven to convince your kids to pick one parent over the other, because that's always a bad idea.
So what can a parent do to make sure that the court order or parenting order goes the way that they want to?
Well, to make sure to do the best thing way you can in court, you have to be the better parent, and that involves being not only the technically better parent, the parent who's better at the discipline, the parent who's better at teaching the kids, but also means you have to be the better parent in terms of being the better person when it comes to the divorce. And that means you have to be the person who sort of doesn't cause the conflict, it doesn't expose the children to conflict, and that's very important for the kids. You can also, to re-emphasize that, you can get professional help with regard to parenting after divorce, because it's a difficult time, but there are lots of programs available to help people parent after divorce and how to deal with their other parent after divorce. So that's important. And it's important that when you be the person that, sort of the ideal parent in the eyes of the judge in terms of every aspect, and don't be the one who sort of drops the ball or lets your kids down or lets the court down in terms of the expectations.
Okay, so let's talk about the kids, right? Is there anything that kids can do to work themselves, or get through this process okay?
Well, there's a number of things that really help kids, and the avoidance of conflict, and I've said it several times today, but that's the number one thing, don't expose them to conflict. But in terms of helping them through the whole change in their life, there's a number of programs that are available for kids that are very helpful for them. And you can if you speak to a good family lawyer, they'll be able to tell you where these programs are. If you speak to a social worker or a psychologist about the whole thing, they'll be able to refer you to this program. But there's a number of programs in every city that deal specifically with helping kids through divorce. If you want to sort of some free or easily accessible ones, especially for younger children, there's this group in the States called the Association of Family Conciliation Courts, and they work with Sesame Street. And in working with Sesame Street, they put a program together, or a series of videos together for kids to help them deal with divorce. And so if you go and you Google Association of Family and Conciliation Courts and Sesame Street, their programs will come up. They've actually got some written materials too you might be able to order, but they have a series of videos that your kids can watch, or you can watch with your kids, that deal with all the emotional sides and the change in the life, and it's all done with familiar characters that your kids have known for a long time. Mm-hmm. So even kids who are a bit older than Sesame Street, when they're going through divorce, seeing the Sesame Street characters again can be comforting to them, and they're the ones talking about divorce. Some of the things you can do is there's also courses for parents to take that you can take to help you, as I mentioned those before. And again, the same type of places that have courses for kids also have courses for parents to help them not only deal with the separation, but also to help them deal with parenting the kids through the separation and help them deal with the other parent through separation. And finally, and this is probably most important, is you need to get a good family lawyer on your side, because this is an important decision, and having it's up to a judge who only gets to see your family for a short period of time, and they're going to make a decision if you can't work it out between the two of you. You're going to have this judge make a decision that governs your kid's life for a long time. So you want to make sure you get your points made clearly across, and they're made the best possible way, and that means getting a good family lawyer. And not only will the family lawyer help you in court, but they can help you outside of court, because there's things you have to do outside of court to help protect you in terms of the relationship with your kids, and also how you should be acting outside of court to show that you're the best parent, and also to protect your kids. And having that help outside of court is as important as what they can do for you in court. But having a good family lawyer will get you the result that you want. And not choosing a family lawyer might get you on the wrong side of a judge because you say the wrong thing inadvertently. So this is a good time to get a lawyer.
Okay. All right. Well, John, thank you very much. You shared a lot of great information today, so thank you. And I hope you'll come back on the show another time. And if you're looking for a family lawyer, a good family lawyer, contact John Schuman at Devry Smith Frank, and his contact information is going to be below the screen. So again, I thank you for watching today, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode of To Your Success.